Former child star Danielle Spencer, best known for playing Dee Thomas on What's Happening, has died.
Through the Fire, Journal of a Child Star. And it talks about me growing up in the industry and also about how later on in life when I got an illness.
Even going through all of this, I still know that there's a plan for me. I'm still here for a reason.
Danielle Spencer is gone, and her final words shook Hollywood like an earthquake just hours before her sudden death. So what really happened? The star didn't just fade quietly. She dropped a cryptic message that felt less like a farewell and more like a warning shot. Now insiders are whispering that it wasn't random at all. It was aimed at someone, and it cracked open a truth the public was never supposed to see. Was this her goodbye, a confession, or something darker, something so heavy that someone out there didn't want it exposed? Danielle's passing isn't just another sad celebrity headline. This one hit different. It's the kind of moment that makes people freeze mid-scroll, read twice, and mutter under their breath, "Wait, what?" The official word is that she passed on August 11th, gastric cancer and cardiac arrest, 60 years old. But if you really knew Danielle...
Into the room, there were about 5 doctors in there, so that scared the living daylights out of me. And they told me that I had breast cancer.
If you knew the weight she carried and the fights she survived, you'd know the story doesn't end there, not even close. Because just hours before she left this world, Danielle dropped a message that wasn't soft, wasn't vague, and definitely wasn't random. It was sharp, it was intentional, and it felt like she was aiming straight at somebody in particular. She wrote about truth, about unfinished conversations, and about the stories that never get told because the wrong people are the ones holding the pen. She never said a name, but the people who knew her past, they didn't need her to spell it out. Danielle Spencer knew what it felt like to be invisible, and she knew it early. She came into Hollywood as just a kid, cast as Dee Thomas in What's Happening, the quick-witted little sister with that side eye and sarcasm that stole every scene. She filmed 65 episodes in the original run, plus 16 more in What's Happening now.
Well, I think it was a family show, and of course, you know, we had subject matter that everyone could relate to, so that's always good. And of course, the characters are so lovable, so even...
Fans adored her, but Hollywood, they only saw her as that role and nothing more. For a young black actress in the 1970s, that wasn't unusual. Typecasting wasn't just a possibility, it was practically a sentence. And for Danielle, things went from tough to heartbreaking in 1977, when her whole world flipped upside down. A brutal car crash killed her stepfather and manager, Tim Pelt, and left Danielle with life-changing injuries. She was just a teenager, barely starting out, and everything she worked for came crashing down. In a fair world, Hollywood would have stepped in, lifted her up, made sure her comeback was strong. But this is Hollywood, where broken stories get swept under the rug. Instead of support, she was shoved to the sidelines. No campaigns, no casting calls, no second chance. It was like she'd been erased before she even had the chance to grow up on her own terms.
Hi, I'm Dr. Danielle Spencer Fields, and you've got compassionate animal care.
But Danielle wasn't the type to stay erased. She did what most stars never dare to do. She walked away. She reinvented herself in a world that doesn't forgive independence, especially not from women who won't play the game. She chased education, earned her doctorate in veterinary medicine by 1993, and built a life healing animals instead of dancing for the industry's cameras. That move alone made her stand out, and maybe even made her dangerous. Because in a business that thrives on control, Danielle proved she could win without it. Still, her road was anything but easy. Danielle Spencer's life was never a straight path. She battled breast cancer, lived with the painful aftermath of that tragic car crash, and carried the weight of being remembered mostly for one childhood role while her real achievements were brushed aside. Friends say she handled it all with grace, but even they admit she noticed the way Hollywood kept her in a box she never chose. In one of her final big interviews, she lit up while talking about the surreal moment What's Happening was placed inside the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. She was grateful, she was proud, but people close to her swear that behind that smile lived a bittersweet truth.
Bad news. We're talking about Danielle Spencer, who played little sister Dee on that hit 1970 sitcom What's Happening. She died Monday after a long battle with cancer.
The recognition came way too late, long after the industry had already slammed its doors shut on her. And that's what makes her final words sting even more. When Danielle spoke of unfinished conversations, fans thought maybe she was hinting at private matters. But those closest to her, they believed she was pointing at something way bigger, at the system itself. A system where black talent, especially black women, are left unprotected, underpaid, and erased until only a fraction of their story gets remembered. Danielle wasn't the type to start messy fights in public. She didn't need to. Her truth came out in quiet but powerful ways, through her advocacy for animals, through her openness about her health struggles, through her bond with fans, where she never once pretended Hollywood treated her right. That was Danielle, authentic, sharp, and unwilling to play a role off-screen. After her passing, tributes flooded in. Fans, co-stars, and family all spoke out. Her younger brother, jazz musician Jeremy Pelt, dropped a gut-wrenching message, calling her a loving spirit and a protector who stayed positive even in her darkest days. Her brother shared that he was right there when Danielle took her final breath, calling it both an honor and a heartbreak. The cast of What's Happening remembered her sharp wit and warmth, while fans flooded social media with clips of Dee Thomas delivering those cutting one-liners that made her unforgettable.
Going through all of this, I still know that there's a plan for me. I'm still here for a reason.
It was a reminder of the comedic fire Danielle carried, a fire that Hollywood never gave a true second act. But hidden in those tributes was something else, an unspoken anger, because Danielle Spencer should have had more roles, more spotlight, more years to shine, and maybe, just maybe, that's what her last words were really pointing at. Not just her own story, but a whole pattern, a cycle where legendary black artists only get celebrated once they're gone. From music to TV to sports, the list is endless. Icons underpaid, overlooked, erased, only to be remembered when it's too late for them to feel the love. Danielle knew that pattern. She lived it. She wore the scars of it. And if you read between the lines of her final message, she wasn't afraid to call it out one last time. Her later years were spent quietly in Virginia, living with her mother, surrounded by the animals she adored and protected, far from the flashing lights, far from the noise. But don't mistake that silence for blindness. Danielle never stopped seeing the forces that shaped her life and cut her opportunities short. She knew exactly how the game was played. And that's why her final words hit so hard. They weren't just a goodbye. They felt like a challenge, a dare, a warning. Because Danielle Spencer was never just Dee from What's Happening. She was a survivor, a healer.
Well, I had a car accident 2 years ago, and I had spinal surgery subsequently.
Danielle.
And a woman who refused to let Hollywood write her story for her. And maybe, just maybe, her last words were her way of making sure we never forget that. If you really want to understand the weight of Danielle's story, you've got to rewind back to the set of a groundbreaking show that shook television forever. That role changed Danielle Spencer's life forever. What's Happening wasn't just another sitcom when it hit ABC from 1976 to 1979. It was groundbreaking. One of the first American shows to put the lives of black teenagers front and center. No sugarcoating, no filters. Inspired by Eric Monte's 1975 classic Cooley High, it dropped at a time when black sitcoms like Sanford and Son and Good Times, also created by Monte, were just starting to break into the mainstream. For millions of viewers, it was the first time they saw themselves on screen without their stories being watered down through white perspectives. The show followed Roger Raj Thomas, Ernest Thomas, Freddie Rerun, Stubbs, Fred Barry, and Dwayne Nelson, Haywood Nelson, navigating life in Los Angeles. And then there was Dee, Raj's little sister, played by a young Danielle Spencer. She was sharp, hilarious, and fearless. One glare, one perfectly timed line, and she could steal an entire scene. For 65 episodes in the original run and another 16 in What's Happening Now, Danielle made her mark. But here's the thing, there was no blueprint for her. As she told Jet Magazine back in 2014, I had never seen any young black girl in that type of spotlight, so I didn't have a reference point in the media as to how to deal with this opportunity. I was from the Bronx. What I did was use my own family as the reference on how to portray my character. That raw authenticity, it worked like magic. Fans adored her. Her catchphrase, "Ooh, I'm telling mama," became legendary. something strangers would yell at her for decades after the show ended. But here's the cruel part.
I had a car accident 2 years ago, and I had spinal surgery subsequently.
In Hollywood, even being part of history doesn't guarantee protection. Fame can vanish, opportunities can disappear, and the industry that celebrates you one day can turn its back the next. Danielle lived that truth, and she carried those scars for the rest of her life. A fair treatment or a future in Hollywood. That's where Danielle's story takes a sharp turn. Her wit on what's happening was so quick, so natural, fans swore she was D in real life. She laughed about it years later, telling Black America Web, "I chuckle because everyone thinks it's original, so I have to act like it's new every time." But here's the twist. Danielle almost never became D at all. In a 2016 interview with a Richmond CBS affiliate, she revealed she didn't land the part after her first audition. Imagine that. Hollywood almost let her slip through the cracks before she even got her shot. But then, a month later, the phone rang. "Pack your bags, you're heading to Los Angeles." For a Bronx girl, it wasn't just a big move, it was a culture shock. The character they handed her was bold, a little sister who never held her tongue, who could go toe-to-toe with the boys and win. Danielle admitted that wasn't really her off-screen vibe. She told the station, "I did not have an older brother. However, I had a lot of pent-up sassiness because I wanted to be like that and I had an excuse." That sass came pouring out, natural but sharpened for the role, and it worked. Born June 24, 1965 in the Bronx, Danielle Louise Spencer grew up with her father, James Spencer, a civil servant, and her mother, Cheryl Spencer, a school teacher. Acting wasn't exactly the family plan, but for Danielle, the pull was magnetic. By the age of 8, she was in acting classes, memorizing lines, slipping into costumes, experimenting with makeup, and discovering the power of becoming someone else. Acting, she told Jet Magazine, was therapeutic because you're able to relate to your characters, figure out what makes them tick, while also infusing your own personality. And that's exactly what made her stand out. She wasn't just performing lines, she was breathing life into them, giving Dee a soul that no script could have written. But as Hollywood often shows us, talent alone doesn't guarantee protection, not even for a star who lit up the screen. When What's Happening Now wrapped in 1988, Danielle took a path almost no one expected. She walked away from Hollywood and went back to school. First UCLA, where she earned a degree in marine biology, then Tuskegee University in Alabama, where in 1993 she secured her doctorate in veterinary medicine. That was Danielle, never afraid to reinvent herself even if it meant leaving the spotlight behind. Her love for animals had been there since day one. She recalled in a 2012 interview, "Ever since I was 5 years old, I can recall bringing my first pet home to my mom. She's like, 'What is this?' I'm saying, 'You have to keep the pet. You can't throw it out.' And I'm screaming and crying, and she let me." That passion turned into her life's work. Her veterinary career lasted decades.
The result of her is just, I thought, why do it on one and not the other when it's more than likely going to?
A calling that mattered more than any Hollywood stage. Still, she never completely disappeared. In 1997, Danielle slipped back onto screens in As Good as It Gets, fittingly as a veterinarian. But behind her quiet victories, tragedy had marked her life long before cancer ever entered the picture. During production of the second season of What's Happening, Danielle and her stepfather manager, Tim Pelt, were in a horrific car crash. Tim was killed instantly. Danielle was left with shattered bones, a broken pelvis, and lay in a coma for 3 weeks. Doctors doubted she'd survive, but Danielle did more than survive. She recovered, and by the show's final season, she was back on set, carrying both her grief and her strength in every scene. That resilience became her trademark, though she rarely got credit for it. Later, she credited Tim and her mother, Cheryl Pelt, as the forces who believed in her talent and protected her career when Hollywood wouldn't. Because Hollywood didn't protect her, it rarely does. And decades later, when Danielle's final message spoke of unfinished conversations and the wrong people holding the pen, it's hard not to wonder if she was talking about exactly that. The system that cheered her one day, erased her the next, and never gave her the shield she deserved. It's impossible not to hear the echoes of Danielle's early years, the sudden twists, the hidden battles, the quiet erasure. But the scars from that 1977 crash didn't just fade into the past. Nearly 2 decades later, they came roaring back. In 2004, Danielle was diagnosed with spinal stenosis, a brutal narrowing of the spine so severe it nearly left her paralyzed. Doctors traced it all the way back to the very same accident that almost killed her as a teenager. And that was only the beginning of the storm. In 2014, she was hit with another devastating blow: breast cancer. Danielle underwent a double mastectomy, leaning on her family through the fear, the surgeries, and the long road of recovery. But in a 2016 sit-down with the Oprah Winfrey Network, she admitted just how heavy the darkness got. "They didn't want me to think of suicide, even though I had considered it," she confessed. Raw, honest, a chilling glimpse at the emotional weight she'd carried in silence. Then came 2018 and another nightmare: emergency brain surgery. For most people, that string of crises would have been the end. But Danielle, she refused to fold. She kept moving, refusing to let pain be the only headline attached to her name. And in the middle of it all, she finally got one of the highest honors of her career. In 2016, Danielle was inducted into the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. For a woman Hollywood had all but forgotten, it was vindication, a permanent stamp of her place in Black television history. Danielle told Black America Web, "I still can't believe it. That's something people can look at for years to come, long after I'm gone." Those words hit differently now, almost like she knew time was shorter than anyone realized. And when you connect them to her final message, those pointed words about truth, unfinished conversations, and the wrong people holding the story, it feels less like a goodbye and more like a warning. Now the pattern starts to show itself. Danielle's final words weren't just nostalgia or reflection. They felt like a coded warning. They came from a woman who had survived tragedy, illness, erasure, and betrayal. A woman honored in museums yet forced to fight most of her toughest battles away from the spotlight. Now she's gone. But the weight of what she said in those final hours, that's not going anywhere. On screen, Danielle Spencer's Dee Thomas was the ultimate little sister, smarter, sharper, deadpan to the core. With one icy stare or a perfectly timed line, she could cut down her big brother Raj and his friends, Dwayne and Rerun, in seconds. And when she capped it off with her now iconic, "Ooh, I'm gonna tell mama," her place in TV history was locked forever. Set in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles, What's Happening was more than comedy. It was groundbreaking. One of the first shows to put the lives of Black teens at the center, inspired by Cooley High. It wasn't just laughs, it was a cultural snapshot, shining light on stories that had been erased from television for too long. And while Hollywood moved on, Danielle didn't stop reinventing herself. After time at UC Davis and UCLA, she earned her veterinary degree from Tuskegee University in 1993. Building a career dedicated to healing and protecting animals. She didn't just treat them, she fought for them, using her platform to push causes the mainstream never cared to spotlight. And in a twist that felt like destiny, when she returned to film in 1997's As Good as It Gets, she played a veterinarian, merging both sides of her life into one role. When news of her death broke, her What's Happening family mourned hard. Haywood Nelson called her a brilliant, loving, positive, pragmatic warrior, and a shero whose strength inspired everyone who knew her. His words honored not just the actress, but the healer, the advocate, the survivor who fought cancer with the same quiet fire she brought to every challenge. But for fans still staring at Danielle Spencer's final message, those glowing tributes only make the question cut deeper. How could someone so celebrated in memory have been so overlooked in life? And why did her last words land less like a farewell and more like a warning? It wasn't just goodbye, it was a coded message. Danielle Spencer's last public words now read like a riddle wrapped in grief. Back then, they might have seemed harmless, maybe even optimistic, but in the shadow of her death, they feel different, sharper, like something she wanted the world to figure out only after she was gone. And that's where the unease really hits. Danielle wasn't some fading footnote in Hollywood's past. She was a cultural marker, a face tied to a groundbreaking era of Black television. She survived tragedies, medical battles, and heartbreaks that would have broken most people. Yet she still carried herself with humor, grace, and quiet defiance. She had seen the industry's shine and its shadows. She knew how fast that spotlight could vanish and how easily voices like hers could be silenced. And here's the thing, her final words didn't come on a red carpet or in some polished farewell. They slipped out years earlier, almost like she wanted them to outlive her. And now they do. Now they raise questions that no one can fully answer. Was Danielle speaking from experience, or was she warning us about something the cameras could never show? Because if you look at the timing, the tone, and everything she was going through, her final words don't just inspire, they unsettle. They leave us questioning who gets to tell the story and who's silenced before the truth is ever heard. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And I'll see you on the next video.